They say that nearly half of all marriages end, but the real failure rate is far higher. A statistic I've seen quoted suggests as many as 97% of marriages functionally fail, not because of a lack of love, but because men were never taught the single most critical discipline for protecting their home: emotional control. We see it play out like a cheap television drama. A wife makes a critical comment about finances. The husband, feeling attacked, his pride wounded, erupts. Voices are raised, doors are slammed. Another crack forms in the foundation. We see the inverse, too. The man who says nothing, but lets resentment build into a silent, corrosive poison that suffocates all intimacy. Both are paths to the same destination: a home filled with tension, not tranquility; a partnership of adversaries, not allies. I know this terrain intimately. For the first 20 years of my career, I was a titan in the tech world. I built companies from scratch, staring down competitors and market crashes. I mastered the art of external warfare. But my inner world was chaos. I was a ghost in my own home, a man ruled by anxiety and a short-fused temper. Every perceived slight, every comment that didn't align with my view was a spark on a powder keg. My success in the boardroom was built on the same reactive, aggressive energy that was eroding my life at home. I had built an empire, but my own mind was an ungoverned, war-torn territory. The breaking point, as it often is, was a quiet disaster. A burnout so severe it landed me in a hospital bed, followed by the loss of a crucial business partnership because of my own inability to manage my reactions. Stripped of my titles and my health, I was forced to confront the man I had become. It was then that I turned not to modern self-help, but to ancient wisdom, to the Stoics, to men like Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who ruled the known world while fighting wars on the frontier and plagues at home, yet still found the discipline to govern himself first. What I learned from him, from Seneca, from Epictetus, was this: the first and most important territory any man must conquer is the 18 inches between his own ears. The strength to lead a company, a team, or a family is forged in the crucible of your own mind. Today, I'm not going to give you motivational platitudes. I am going to give you the blueprint, the operating system for building what the ancients called an inner citadel, a fortress of calm, logic, and self-possession that can withstand any storm, especially those that begin within the walls of your own home. This is the work that saved my life, and it can fortify your marriage. Before we lay the first stone of this inner citadel, you must understand why it is so critical. Modern culture tells you to express yourself, to be authentic with your feelings, to let it all out. This is a seductive and catastrophic lie. Your home is not a stage for emotional theater. It is a sanctuary that you, as a man, are charged with protecting. And the greatest threat to that sanctuary is not an external enemy, but your own unregulated emotional state. Think of your mind as the command center for your entire life. When an event happens, your wife is late, your son gets a bad grade, an unexpected bill arrives, that event sends a signal to your command center. In an untrained mind, that signal hits a red panic button. Alarms blare. The system floods with cortisol and adrenaline. Your response is immediate, illogical, and destructive. You are a reactor, a puppet whose strings are pulled by external events. The iron mind approach, rooted in Stoic philosophy, is about installing a master controller in that command center. It's about creating a space between the signal and the response. In that space lies your power. In that space lies your freedom. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This isn't a passive acceptance of fate. It is the ultimate assertion of control over the one thing you can truly command: your own judgment. I remember a mentee of mine, a brilliant financial analyst named David. He could manage a portfolio worth hundreds of millions of dollars through market volatility with ice in his veins. But at home, if his wife questioned a purchase he'd made, he'd crumble. He saw her question not as a data point, but as a judgment on his competence. He would become defensive, angry, and dismissive. His professional life was a testament to his logical mind, but his personal life was in shambles. Why? Because he had never been taught to apply the same discipline he used at work to his own emotional triggers. He was a master of external markets, but a novice in his own internal landscape. The work we did together was simple, but not easy. We began to identify the story he was telling himself when his wife brought up money. The story was, "She thinks I'm a failure. She doesn't trust me." The reality, the fact, was simply, "She is asking a question about our shared budget." By separating the external event from his internal narrative, he began to reclaim his power. He stopped being a reactor and started being a leader in his own home. So I ask you, what stories are you telling yourself? When your spouse's actions trigger a reaction in you, are you responding to what actually happened, or to the narrative of disrespect and conflict you've constructed in your own mind? Building an iron mind isn't just for facing chaos out there in the world. It is the fundamental discipline required to protect the peace, stability, and love within your home. Now, for the blueprint itself. This is not theory. This is a practical, 5-point training regimen for your mind. These are the foundational principles that you must drill daily until they become as natural as breathing. First, pause before reacting. The Stoics called this the art of ascent. When you feel that flash of anger, that surge of defensiveness, your only job is to do nothing. Create a gap. I call it the 3-second rule. Before a single word leaves your mouth, you take one deep, deliberate breath and count to 3. In that pause, you interrupt the emotional hijack. You give your rational mind, the prefrontal cortex, a chance to come back online. A client of mine, a construction foreman used to a world of shouting and immediate commands, found this impossible at first. When his wife would criticize his parenting, his instinct was to fire back immediately. We worked on a physical anchor. He would consciously turn the ring on his finger, a simple physical act that bought him those crucial 3 seconds. It felt artificial, he said, like a dam holding back a flood. But with practice, the dam held. The flood of reactive anger subsided, and he could finally respond to his wife's concern, not just her criticism. Second, separate fact from story. This is the core of Epictetus's teachings. He famously said, "It is not things that upset us, but our judgments about things." Your spouse is 30 minutes late. That is a fact. The story you tell yourself, "She doesn't respect my time, she's being selfish, something must be wrong," is your judgment. That judgment is the source of your suffering, not the event itself. Your task is to ruthlessly strip away the story and deal only with the fact. When I was in the thick of my tech career, my wife once forgot to pay a significant bill. The fact was, a bill was overlooked. My old story would have been about incompetence, about how I had to manage everything myself. My trained mind paused and sought the facts. I asked, "What happened?" She had been up all night with our sick daughter. The story changed from one of incompetence to one of a tired, overburdened partner. The facts didn't change, but my judgment did, and that changed everything. Third, practice radical ownership. Stop saying you make me angry. No one can make you angry. They can act in a way that you choose to respond to with anger. The phrase "I feel angry" is infinitely more powerful than "you make me angry." The first is an observation of your internal state, which you can control. The second is a declaration of victimhood, which renders you powerless. Taking ownership of your emotions is the ultimate act of reclaiming your sovereignty. It stops the blame cycle in its tracks. When you can stand in the middle of a disagreement and say, "Okay, I am feeling defensive right now, and I need a moment to process why you have just transformed a potential fight into an opportunity for self-awareness and connection. Which are you? The man who blames his wife for his own internal weather, or the man who is the master of his climate? Fourth, channel anger into action. Anger is energy. It is a powerful, volatile fuel. An untrained man will spill that fuel and set his own house on fire. A disciplined man will pipe that energy into a productive engine. When you feel that frustration rising, you must have a pre-planned outlet. Do not sit and stew in it. Go for a walk. Go to the garage and fix that squeaky hinge. Go to your desk and organize your finances. The Stoic philosopher Seneca would often go for a long, brisk walk to exhaust his temper. He transformed the heat of anger into physical motion, allowing his mind to cool. Choose a productive action. Channel that raw energy into creating order, not chaos. Finally, establish daily discipline rituals. Emotional strength is not a gift, it is a muscle. It must be trained. You wouldn't expect to be physically strong without going to the gym. Why do you expect to be mentally strong without daily practice? This can be simple. 5 minutes in the morning, reflecting on the challenges of the day ahead and resolving to meet them with patience. 5 minutes in the evening, journaling on your emotional performance. Ask yourself 3 questions as the Stoics did. What did I do well today in managing my emotions? Where did I fail? What will I do differently tomorrow? Proverbs 16:32 says, "He who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who takes a city." Your marriage is your city. Rule it by first ruling your own spirit. We have the principles. Now, let's talk about battlefield tactics. These are the tools you use in the heat of the moment, when the alarms are blaring in your command center and emotional instinct is screaming for you to react. Principles are the strategy, but tactics win the immediate skirmish. The first and most powerful tool is tactical breathing. This isn't the gentle, mindful breathing of a yoga class. This is a combat-proven technique used by soldiers and first responders to regulate their nervous system under extreme duress. It's called box breathing. It is simple. Inhale for a count of 4. Hold your breath for a count of 4. Exhale for a count of 4. Hold the exhale for a count of 4. Repeat, 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out, 4 seconds hold. Do this 3 or 4 times. What this does on a physiological level is profound. It forces your body out of the fight or flight sympathetic nervous system response and activates the rest and digest parasympathetic response. You are manually overriding your body's panic button. When your spouse says the one thing that you know is designed to push your buttons, before you say a word, you execute this drill. It is your first line of defense. It brings oxygen to your brain and creates that critical space between stimulus and response. The second tactic is to name it to tame it. Neurologists have shown that the simple act of putting a label on an intense emotion can significantly dampen its power. When you feel that hot surge of rage, that cold knot of defensiveness, you label it, either out loud or in your mind. This is anger. This is my ego feeling wounded. This is defensiveness. By naming it, you are externalizing it. You are shifting from being consumed by the feeling to being an observer of the feeling. You are no longer the storm, you are the scientist studying the storm. I taught this to a lawyer I mentor. He was brilliant in the courtroom, but would get into shouting matches with his teenage son. The moment he learned to silently say to himself, "Okay, my authority is being challenged, and I am feeling anger," the entire dynamic shifted. He could then address the behavior without becoming the emotion itself. The third tactic is to use a physical anchor. This is a pre-chosen physical object that you touch to remind you of your commitment to self-control. For me, it's my watch. It's a simple, heavy timepiece. When I feel myself getting pulled into an emotional current, I place my thumb on the cool, glass face. It's a physical sensation that cuts through the mental chaos. It's a nonverbal signal to myself that says, remember your training. You are in command. For another man I worked with, an ex-athlete, it was a small, smooth stone he kept in his pocket. When his wife would bring up a past mistake, he would close his hand around that stone. It was his anchor to the present moment, a reminder to stay grounded in reason rather than being dragged back into the resentment of the past. What will be your anchor? Is it your wedding ring, a watch, an object in your pocket? Choose one. Invest it with the meaning of your discipline. In the heat of conflict, when your mind is screaming, let this simple physical touch be the voice of reason that calls you back to your principles. These aren't tricks. They are potent, practical tools for reclaiming control when you are under fire. With your in-the-moment tactics established, we must now elevate our strategy to conflict resolution. An argument is inevitable in any relationship. A destructive fight is not. The Stoic husband doesn't seek to avoid conflict, but to engage in it with wisdom, purpose, and control. This is his playbook. The first play is a radical shift in posture. Listen actively instead of preparing your defense. In 99% of arguments, we are not truly listening. We are hearing just enough to formulate our rebuttal. Our partner is speaking, but in our minds, we are already in court, preparing our closing statement. This is a recipe for mutual destruction. The disciplined man does the opposite. He listens with the sole intent to understand. This requires silencing your own ego, your own need to be right. A powerful technique is to repeat back what you heard, not in a mocking way, but with genuine curiosity. So, if I'm hearing you correctly, you feel like I'm not prioritizing our family time when I work late. Is that right? This does two things. First, it ensures you are actually arguing about the same thing. Second, it makes your partner feel heard, which de-escalates the emotional intensity of the entire encounter. You are no longer two combatants lobbing grenades, you are two problem solvers looking at the same map. The second play is what my wife and I call the 24-hour rule. This is reserved for those arguments that are spiraling out of control, the ones where emotions are running so high that no productive outcome is possible. When you reach that point, one of you calls a ceasefire. You agree to table the discussion for 24 hours. This is not about avoidance. It is a strategic retreat. It allows for a crucial cooling-off period. It lets the adrenaline and cortisol drain from your systems. It gives you both time to reflect on the core issue instead of the immediate emotional injury. I'll be honest, the first time we tried this, it felt like a failure. It felt like I was surrendering. But when we came back to the topic the next evening, the fire was gone. We were able to speak about the problem without the emotional shrapnel. We solved in 20 calm minutes what we had failed to solve in an hour of yelling. To enact this, you need a script. You need to agree on it with your partner ahead of time, during a time of peace. The script can be as simple as this. I can feel myself getting overwhelmed by emotion, and I know I can't respond with the wisdom you deserve right now. I am committed to solving this with you. Let's take a pause and revisit this tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Notice the key elements. You take ownership of your emotional state. You affirm your commitment to your partner and the relationship. You set a specific, agreed-upon time to resume. This is not storming out. This is a disciplined, strategic maneuver that protects the relationship from yourselves. Are you listening to understand or listening to win? Are you willing to call a strategic retreat to save the long-term peace? The Stoic husband knows that winning an argument is a hollow victory if it costs him the trust and intimacy of his partner. He plays the long game, where the only true victory is a stronger, more resilient union. Everything we have discussed, the principles, the tactics, the playbook, will fail if it is not supported by a foundation of consistent, deliberate practice. This is where we elevate mindset from a mere technique to a spiritual discipline. I use the word spiritual not in a necessarily religious sense, but in the classical sense. The discipline of tending to one's own spirit, one's inner character, or what the Stoics called the hegemonikon, the ruling faculty of the mind. An athlete does not train only on game day. A soldier does not learn to handle his weapon only in the middle of a firefight. The training happens daily, in times of peace, so that the skills are ingrained when chaos erupts. Your emotional and mental training must be the same. This is accomplished through ritual. Human beings are creatures of ritual. The rituals you establish will determine the man you become. I propose a simple, powerful, nightly ritual. Before you go to sleep, take no more than 5 minutes. Find a quiet space, away from your phone, away from the television. With a notebook or simply in the quiet of your own mind, conduct a daily review. This practice is a direct inheritance from the great Stoic thinkers like Seneca and Epictetus, who ended each day by examining their own actions. Ask yourself 3 specific questions about your day. 1. Where did I exercise self-control and patience today? Acknowledge your wins. Did you pause before reacting to your boss? Did you listen patiently while your child told a long story? Did you feel a surge of irritation in traffic and choose to breathe through it? You must recognize and reinforce your successes, no matter how small. This builds momentum. 2. Where did I allow my emotions to rule me? This requires ruthless honesty. Be specific. Did you use a sarcastic tone with your wife? Did you silently fume when your plans were disrupted? Did you allow anxiety about the future to rob you of peace in the present? Do not judge yourself harshly. Simply observe. Naming your failures strips them of their power and turns them into data for improvement. 3. What is my plan to improve tomorrow? Based on your review, make a simple, actionable resolution for the next day. If you were impatient, your plan might be, tomorrow, when I feel impatience rising, I will use my box breathing technique immediately. If you were critical, tomorrow, I will find one thing to genuinely praise about my wife and tell her. This 5-minute ritual is your mental gym. It is the daily maintenance of your inner citadel. The Stoics and the great figures of the Bible did not simply react to their lives, they trained for them. Marcus Aurelius wasn't writing his meditations for us, he was writing them for himself, as part of his daily discipline of self-examination and moral fortification. This practice transforms you from a passive participant in your own life into an active architect of your own character. Will you commit to this? Will you carve out 5 minutes a day, not for your job, not for your family, but for the forging of your own mind? This private, consistent discipline is the wellspring from which all public strength and domestic peace will flow. Now it is time to move from knowledge to action. All the philosophy and all the strategies in the world are useless dust if they are not applied in the real world. Your marriage, your home, your daily interactions. This is your training ground. This is the arena where you will forge your iron mind. Therefore, I am issuing you a challenge. I call it the 7-Day Iron Mind Marriage Challenge. For 1 week, your task is not to change your wife, not to change your circumstances, but to focus with singular intensity on governing yourself. This is not about achieving perfection. It is about practicing awareness. It is a reconnaissance mission into the territory of your own mind. Here is the protocol for the next 7 days. First, every morning, before you look at your phone, you will spend 2 minutes reviewing the 5 core principles. Pause before reacting. Separate fact from story. Practice radical ownership. Channel anger into action. Commit to daily discipline. Set an intention for the day to embody just one of them. Perhaps Monday is the day of the pause. Tuesday is the day of radical ownership. Second, throughout the day, you will carry your physical anchor. You will use it. When a moment of friction arises, and it will, you will use your tactics. You will breathe. You will name the emotion. You will touch your anchor. You will execute the play. Your goal is not to be a passionless robot, but to be a man in control of his response. Third, every evening, you will perform the 5-minute nightly ritual we just discussed. You will log your wins and your failures without judgment. You will gather the data. Where are you strongest? What are your most common triggers? This journal is your map. It will show you where the enemy, your own reactive nature, is hiding. I encourage you to share your progress. Not necessarily the details of your private life, but your commitment to the challenge. Post in the comments below. Tell us which principle you are starting with. Share your commitment with a trusted friend or mentor, a man who will hold you accountable. The act of declaring your intention is a powerful step in making it real. I remember when I first started this practice, it felt clumsy, like learning a new language. There were days I failed spectacularly, reverting to old, destructive habits. But I kept at it. My wife noticed the effort before she noticed the results. She saw me pausing. She heard me rephrasing things, saying I feel angry instead of, "You're making me angry." It was the effort, the visible sign that I was fighting a battle for our peace, that began to rebuild the trust my emotional chaos had eroded. Your marriage is your greatest dojo. Every disagreement, every moment of friction is not a threat to your peace, it is an opportunity to sharpen your discipline. Are you ready to begin the training? We stand at a crossroads. One path is the one offered by modern culture, the path of emotional reactivity, of blame, of expressing every feeling without filter. It is a wide, easy path that leads to a home filled with strife and a partnership built on sand. The other path is the ancient way. It is the path of discipline, of self-possession, of radical ownership. It is a harder path. It requires daily training, constant vigilance, and a willingness to confront your own weaknesses. But this path leads to an inner citadel of unshakable peace and a marriage built on the bedrock of respect and resilience. What I have given you today is not a list of tips or tricks. It is a blueprint for the reconstruction of your inner world. It is the operating system used by emperors, philosophers, and leaders for thousands of years to navigate the chaos of life with calm and purpose. The choice, as always, is yours. You hold the power, not over your spouse, not over your circumstances, but over your own mind. That is the only power that has ever truly mattered. Your work begins now. Choose one principle from today. Just one, and make it your focus for the next 24 hours. Maybe it is the 3-second pause. Maybe it is the nightly review. Start small. The longest journey begins with a single, deliberate step. If you are committed to this path, to forging an iron mind and building a legacy of strength for your family, then subscribe to this channel. We are gathering a community of men dedicated to this essential work. Now, I want to hear from you. In the comments below, tell me, which principle will you start with? And what do you see as your biggest challenge in implementing it? Your vulnerability is a strength that will allow other men to learn alongside you. Join me next time, when we will address the critical next step: how to use these principles to rebuild trust after it has been broken by emotional blow-ups. The work is hard, but the reward is a life of true freedom and a home of lasting peace. Go and begin your training.